Hey guys, we're back with another episode of In the Trenches. Our guest today is a close friend of mine. In fact, he's in my inner circle. Someone who I rely on greatly in all aspects of my jobs. He's a director, a photographer, and a fantastic editor. And I can't wait for y'all to listen to this episode. But I want to remind y'all, please like, share, and subscribe if you're digging the content. So let's jump right now into it with Edgar Evan. Edgar Evan in the house, the E-Man.
Thank you for having me, man.
How are you, bud?
Yeah, this is fun, you know? We know we've talked, I mean, we've riffed so much. We talk so much, so it's fun to get in here and do this thing. And, you know, I still feel weird. I feel in a weird space having to sit here and talk. I'm like, what do I need to talk about, you know?
Well, it was weird. I don't of all the guests we've had, I have the least amount of notes because I feel like I know you so well, and that's kind of one of the big reasons why I thought it'd be awesome to have you as a guest, is because I value your artistic vision pretty.
Thank you, man.
Pretty unconditionally, right? Because I mean, you are vital to my process now. You know, you're a part of my team, even though you're a credited director, photographer on your own. You know, that just shows you our friendship and how we really come together creatively.
Oh,
you know,
sure.
so I figured that would be a pretty rad episode to have and talk about and just get into it. So,
agreed, man. There's just so much, you know, like as much as I do my own creative, we work so much on so many projects that, you know, it's just that we overlap on everything. So,
really, we do.
Yeah.
We started on what? Did I drag you in on Bailey Zimmerman or so? Was that like the first one? Religiously?
I think there was like 2 or so before that, but I know that's like, I hopped in as an editor primarily with you, which we had met previously before on so many. I mean, I think it goes years back.
That's right. I remember it. But do you know why? Do you know why I said that video?
Because I think that's the first video where we got to hang out and riff, and I mean,
you stayed with me the whole time.
From the moment you popped up and we were hanging out, you know, we're playing the song, we're sitting in your car blasting it, trying to come up with ideas, riffing back and forth on what this could be, what it should be, how to make it different.
Yeah.
And, you know, from the beginning of production to the end of production, you know, we hung out the whole way. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Your you know, when I try to like find the impetus of what it is about you that I'm really feeding off of, really it's your storytelling. Your storytelling is really, really great. Not only in the concept of it, you know, writing of it or plotting it, it's also in how you shoot for that story. I have a tendency to overshoot almost every setup because somewhere back in the day, I felt like I needed tons of visual dynamics. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, with budgets and time constraints and just, you know, nothing has changed in our line of work. With all that there, I really enjoy how you help me tell my stories concisely for the shoot.
For sure. Cut the fat, you know, that's what we have to do. You know, there's only so much you can squeeze into a story. And at the end of the day, is it better to have 8 cuts that try to tell it or 1 really good cut, you know? So it's how can you cut that fat, you know?
Mm-hmm. We talk about that all the time tonally, because so then, you know, a lot of our times too, we spend time on set. You stay with me on set. I really don't have ADs much, right? I don't have them. But because you're with me so closely creatively on set, you kind of fulfill that little role with me. But like, it's the edits where we spend all of our time talking about the business, where you're going, and even your jobs, and you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start at the beginning. So like, how did you know you wanted to start in the visuals, in the filmmaking and photography lane?
You know, that's a hard one to dive back into, because I started as a music kid. I played music my whole life growing up. I moved here thinking I was going to be a musician, like 98% of Nashville. You know, I moved here to college and it's like, I'm going to play music and record and make music, and that's going to be my life. And I moved here with a little bit of background in photo. Like I always would do, like I traveled a decent amount, so I'd do photos. Being a music kid, I'd always take other people's photos. You know, you just want to have a bunch of wide creative options. So I think as a creative, you always want to dive into whatever type of expression that can be. And moving here about a semester into college, I was taking all these theory classes. I realized that all these audio classes I thought would just be recording cool stuff was all physics and the science behind it. And it wasn't for me. I didn't really care about why they needed to do these sounds or what exact mathematical formula went into it. I was just like, either that sounds cool or it doesn't. So I was kind of in this confluence of not sure about what I was going to do or what I was going to dive into. And I remember being on YouTube, and that's kind of 2010. YouTube was just starting to spark. It wasn't just these stupid videos or things going on. There's people who are actually making some really in-depth content and cool things. And it was kind of breaking this gap of where MTV and VH1 kind of fell off and they were losing viewers to the reality side or to gimmicky shows. But all of that old between, music videos or live sessions and that space of just being able to dive into the visuals and music was rebirthing through YouTube. So I remember going on there and finding all of these live sessions and these, like there's a group, LeBlago Tech, who was doing all these sessions of artists, just one camera running around like the streets of Paris or Amsterdam. And it was cool. It was raw. It wasn't polished. It wasn't pretty, but it was such a unique, in-depth moment, with this artist that no one else was going to get with these unique acoustics. And I remember seeing that and was like, this would be really cool to make. Like maybe this is where I need to go. Maybe this is what I need to do. So I remember after watching that, I kind of had some contemplations about, all right, am I going to change my degree? What does that look like? How much do I lose trying to get out of all of this music stuff that I've done? Is there a way to kind of marriage the two?
Okay. Yeah.
And, there's some other little bits in there. I ended up getting a camera through a very odd situation with a previous roommate. That's a whole nother story there.
A camera, like a video camera or a phone?
We can dive. I got a first camera was a Canon 7D.
Okay.
Which wasn't, it wasn't great at the time, but you could buy these little, I forgot what it's called. It's like Magic Lantern or something. You could buy this program that you put into an SD and throw it in there, and they would open up the extra camera data that they weren't allowed to use at the time because there was different taxes to have a video camera. So there are ways to kind of hack the inner workings of it.
All right.
And then like on eBay, you could buy these little metal adapters that came from China that allow you to hook up these old vintage, like I think we had old Nikkor lenses. So I bought this little adapter and hooked to this Nikkor lens, and you're hooking it onto the front. And then I had to take little pieces of like a little piece of paper and cards to wedge open the f-stop. So you're just kind of judging where you're at. Okay. But it gave you
DIY.
This, yeah,
you had to
DIY
be inventive.
Everything. Yeah. I just didn't, you don't have tons of money. So you're trying to find the cheapest ways to make these really cinematic looking things off this little camera. And you're just watching all these YouTube videos and these blogs, trying to figure out how you can do it for a college dime, Do
you feel like I'm going to get sidetracked.
Yeah.
Can you remember where we are?
Yeah. Diving into
But I was going to deviate for a second. Do you feel like we miss that feeling? As
you
get,
for sure, man.
As you get led behind the curtain, like how do you harness? Can you harness that feeling where you dive? You said I dived right in. I didn't know. I just had to do it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I miss that feeling, and we try to relive it because at that point, it's like I've got a camera. I can make some cool stuff. Like the world's my oyster.
Yeah,
like
charge.
I'll just go make it. Like why do I need anything to tell me? And now you're stuck with these budgets, and you're like, well, am I going to get the right camera package? What am I going to do if I don't have these lenses? If I don't have enough of the people behind the scenes, what if I don't have these right locations? Versus it's so guerrilla back then that you could just email people and dude, let's go do it. You got an hour and
it's almost
tomorrow.
Like you want to harness that and try to figure out how to do that now.
Oh, I know, man.
Right.
Dive back.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't want to distract, but anyway.
No, I totally missed that, man. It was a green space, and you weren't really convoluted with things that you've done or trying to promote yourself. It's just all from the start. You know, you're all it's all new scopes. You're not trying to
sponge.
Yeah.
Putting everything in, just one step on the ladder each time. Just, you're climbing.
Yeah. Just go make something cool. That's all you really have to say. You're not worried about marketing or the next job or the next bid or who you're pleasing or who you're not, you know?
So you built a reel then, or how did you break into the...
Yeah, I started filming that thing, and pretty early on in my second semester or so, I ended up running into this guy who ran a music blog at the time. His name is Michael Ruther, and he ran this blog called Our Vinyl. And that was back when people would go to websites, you know, to find music. You'd go and they'd do daily posts on like, check out this new artist, and they would get tons of traction. They started doing a couple little videos that kind of started to get some YouTube traction. And I remember meeting him, and he was like, you know, we're trying to film stuff. Well, we'd love to have you come out and help us and start doing this thing. So I started popping out with them to film these live sessions of these different artists. And a lot of those kind of started getting really good traction. You know, there was stuff with like Alan Stone in the Woods, which we did during this festival out in Wakarusa. I mean, the whole story behind that was crazy. But we filmed all these sessions that started to blow up and started to get traction. And that's kind of how I got my feet wet into the film world and starting to get somewhat of a reel behind me, but also get some of the connections and get some of the basis to go out and chase some of those other jobs and other spaces.
Wow. Now, did you leave? Does that mean you left music behind at that point?
You know, it took me, I didn't ever necessarily, I did leave music behind at some point, but I was still always trying to play music or play with people. I was still dancing that fine line of trying to film a couple videos in the week, but also still go play a couple shows with people that week as well. So I was still kind of dancing between those two.
Yeah.
But there was a point where coming out of college, I was, you know, working a bar in Tulsa. I was a bartender on the weekends.
Okay.
And I had a buddy who had just started touring with this newer artist, and they need somebody to go do some weekend stuff. So they hit me up and like, hey, we've got a whole weekend gig for you to go out on the road.
When was this?
This would have been 2014, 2015.
Okay.
So heyday.
Early days.
Early day. Everything was going to YouTube.
Yeah.
Instagram didn't really support video.
Exactly.
You know, there wasn't, it was purely either you make some content that's going to go on YouTube in a vlog, like polished format, and then you get 3 minutes, you know, which is wild to think, you know, 3 whole minutes to take a piece versus the minute you might get now, and photos, you know, to see what I could do. And I remember getting that call, and it was like, all right, I'm going to quit my bartender job and we're going to figure this out. And
this out. Now, were you shooting photo at that time?
I was doing it a little bit on the side, but bartending was supplementing a lot of my income. Yeah.
Who was the artist?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember his name. Nobody, but the tour was Lee Bryce.
Oh, okay.
So it was Lee Bryce's tour. He was an opening act.
Okay.
And I think it was like a Jägermeister sponsored tour. Sure. Yeah, it was.
Can you remember your big break that you feel was like in the world where you felt like, okay, I want to do this hard for a living?
Well, after that, I felt I made a good job and I met people out there and I thought it was a great thing. But of course, I came back into the lull of, all right, you don't have a job, you quit your bartending, you go find some work quick, go hustle, go market, go email after email after email and start hitting people up. And I remember this is back in Craigslist days when you could go on Craigslist for jobs.
Okay. I missed all that.
Oh, I mean, you didn't want to be on Craigslist. It was like you'd hit up a job and be filming some stuff and they'd send you something back and you're like, I don't think I want to be a part of this, whatever, you know. But there was a very vague ad that popped up and it was looking for somebody to shoot content in the music world, touring, festivals, etc.
You're like, I
vague. And I was like, that sounds rad, you know. So I remember hitting them up and got called back, and it was for a company called Fly High, which I know you've worked with, just like Monaco and Ryan Schmidt. There's a bunch of people over there, but Monaco is kind of the head of that, working with Luke Bryan and those people.
Mike.
So that Craigslist ad turned into a call with them. And then I remember I got pulled in, like they kind of gave me a couple little things. We went out and I helped shoot a, Chris Jansen video.
Oh, okay.
With Monaco and Keith Lehman. That was the first job I did with them.
Okay.
And then from there, they kind of threw me out to a festival where we started doing some of those festival lines like Crash My Playa and things like that. Yeah. So slowly I started getting integrated until they had a spot pop up with Dustin Lynch to go on the road, you know, for like a full-time gig.
Oh, okay.
And that's kind of where I finally, besides dancing gig to gig, I finally had myself latched into a job where I could
count on a check and know what your schedule is.
I could go and delve into an artist, and it's not just a one-off or a quick experience to turn around something. Sure. Yeah.
Now, did you have any, when you were going through the, the waters of content, did you ever have, was there ever a line of sight to being more in production rather than content on the road? Or did you even know that was there yet? Truthfully, I mean,
for
because
sure,
you didn't watch music. I mean, I wanted to flash back. Were you like a music video kid? I was. I would just sit all day, watch videos. Yeah, so, I mean, I wanted to do that.
I used to live in front of my TV and MTV with a notepad. And because I was a music kid first, but music videos I loved them, man. Especially those videos where you felt the marriage between a story and the song itself. Sure. Where you felt yourself, you weren't losing the fact that you were listening to the song, but you were in a whole nother space because there was a video telling you a story to comply. You know, that marriage of those two things.
Did you ever want to do that? Or did you think that's
where
I
wanted to be?
Was that where you thought you were going? Was this a step? Was this all a plan?
This is all a plan for me to get into those spaces because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And that's always what that's where I wanted to be, was in making some type of story, making something that was more storytelling. And it really wasn't content. You know, I didn't even really think content at that time was technically content. I was making short documentaries for YouTube was how I saw it.
I love that.
You know, because it wasn't quick clips. It wasn't, here's a little sample of the road. It was, how do I tell a documentary about this person's life on the road? And that's kind of the site that I came into it with.
Yeah, rather than just a highlight reel of visuals, you were trying to actually tell a story out there and say, okay, maybe of this 1 minute, 90 second, whatever clip, 40 seconds might not even be the artist. Yeah. It might just be telling the story and then the payoff.
And I don't think a lot, you know, don't get me wrong, there were sizzles of that. There was points where you do like that docu style on the road and there'd be that first 30-second sizzle. Sure. But just a pure sizzle of an artist, just that live thing didn't really exist at that time.
No,
you know,
I mean, it's personally washed out today, even in my opinion, but it still is being done.
People always have their one thing, but that's more like your Live Nation teaser. It's not people. If you do that back to back to back, it gets pretty old pretty quick, in my opinion.
So how did you? We've talked about this in the length, you know, where you. Well, let's get into that in just a second. So keep going. How did you break into, say, your first? How did you break out of the road to saying, I can't do this road as much? I mean, we all still do it. I'm on the road right now, but you have to, it's just another feather. But right then, in that time in your life, that was your only feather.
Oh, for sure, man.
So how did you get to put another feather in your cap? Because you're a man of mystery.
I know, man.
I rely on you for so many aspects because of how well I feel you are as a storyteller. And you know the business. Yeah. So, I mean, literally, Troy, you know this to be true. It's like that. Okay. I mean, even Troy will be like, hey, Spidey, can you do that? I'm like, have you checked with Edgar? Totally. How did you make that shift? When did that happen?
I think one of the benefits of working with Fly Eye and kind of moving in that space was you were kind of a utility tool. Okay. So anytime I wasn't on the road doing something, I was helping, you know, Monaco on his music videos, or I was helping them in the edit background. So I was constantly juggling different things beyond just being on the road. And they kind of had it scheduled, you know, they had a roster of artists and they were pumping us out onto different people on the road. Mm-hmm. And I went with Dustin for a good bit, but they wanted me out with another artist. So we slotted in, I remember after being out there for a little bit of time, we slotted in a guy named Daniel Vorlay, who was on the T.A. Thomas video with us, operator. Wow. Killer, man. Yeah. He was doing...
Daniel. Shout out to that guy. I only worked with him once, but wow.
Love Daniel, man.
Yeah, I had a blast with him.
Oh, dude, he's so fun. And that's back when he was doing like rap videos and all these, you know, it was totally different.
Okay, I didn't know that about him.
But, you know, he came up with like his tiny little Nikon on a kind of jerry-rigged Steadicam, and now he's running an RE Trinity, you know. But that's, you know, so he came into Dustin Lynch when I was kind of transitioning, as they were trying to plug me with another artist.
Okay.
But doing that, I kind of got to be out on the, I was kind of on the road, but I didn't have to dive into that full year in. I wasn't diving into 9 straight months at that point. I was still juggling their 10 different festivals they would do. I was helping out on the various shoots that they would try to do. And
now, were you just filming, or were you filming and editing? Or did they have
filming? I was editing. I mean, I was a second AC to Rocky because I knew how to set up the steady cam. I was helping run lights on some of the stuff. We were kind of a jack of all trades. And that's kind of, being in those kind of, I don't want to say low budget, but lower budget spectrum videos. We're all kind of taking multiple roles and seeing how
everyone's wearing multiple hats.
Make rent by wearing multiple hats. So you kind of just juggle and try to learn as much as you can and fake as much as you can, saying I can do it, and pick up the slack and try to figure out how you're going to get it done by yourself for the most part,
Absolutely. I know that very well. A lot of our listeners or viewers will ask the question, yeah, cool, all fine and dandy, but now you've directed, you've directed 2 Warren Zeider videos, different videos.
Yes.
That won 2 different CMT awards. Is that right?
No. One of them is, so we did his Pretty Little Poison video last year.
Yeah.
And that won a CMT this year for breakthrough video. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we just did another one with him for his new.
That's right. I got confused because it was so rad and I was at your set. That's right. It's new. What was that one? That was
a song called Relapse by him, which is fun because I got to dive into your world on that one.
Absolutely.
Which I remember I calling you about. I was just like, I knew what I wanted because I was so, growing up MTV kid, like those Jimmy Eat World videos, those Good Charlotte videos, those things, like I love that. And I loved the story.
Simple Plan.
But it's a more simplistic story, but you have to do it well. Yeah. So it's not this, cerebral thriller thing like the previous video was, where I could eat into that space of where you can play into cinema, where you're showing something that's not there. You're showing the silence of what's happening.
Hold on now, you're getting into the half of the episode I want to dive into. Because that's that's the beauty of that's the beauty of the E-Man right there. We're going to talk about all kinds of jobs, but we're almost there. How do you get to doing it? I mean, you went from shooting road videos and being a jack of all trades. To then saying did you had to focus. You had to shift your focus.
Yeah, there was definitely a shift of focus, and there was
turning down things, right?
There was an element of turning down. I think a lot of it, though, and I hate to say this, was I tried to say yes to almost everything I could. If I had time to do it, I would try to do it.
You said you hate to say this. You needed to then.
Yeah, you needed to.
Looking back, it's hard to reflect on something that worked. But
I think it puts you in a lot of pockets, and it gives you a lot of experience in a wide array of things, and it gives you, I think it's important being a utility tool, especially today. As much as it's hard on a marketing sense to throw yourself out there and be like, I'm a director, when you can look at all these different facets that somebody's doing, you're like, I don't know if you are, you do the road thing and you've done a directing thing, but you've also done animation over here. You've done this thing over here. It's hard to have a clear value of what you bring to the table, but it's also hard to make a full living if you just want to put yourself as a director today, or if you just want to put yourself as an animator. You're going to have some rough months if you don't look at yourself as a utility tool coming up and being able to say yes to a lot of jobs.
Hence where the podcast takes a different direction. Yes, my notes go away. I can't agree with you more. I have all kinds of things to talk about, but let's get into that, because that's exactly it. I mean, look at me. I'm a photographer and a director, yes. But think about it. What aspects, branches do I direct? Many different things. Mm-hmm. What aspects of photo do I photograph? Mm-hmm. Many different things. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not just, the days of, in my opinion, the days of waiting around, hustling, grinding, whatever you want to call it, for the tier 1 music videos is knocking on death's door.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I have to say, and you're talking to a guy who has made a living 2+ decades just doing videos.
Yeah.
Saying, fuck content, fuck those cameras, DSLR,
Not
out,
happening. Yeah.
out. You know, and here I am saying, nah,
No.
you cannot sustain a living sitting around or whatever it is pursuing just the tier 1.
Yeah, it just can't. I mean, there are people, very few, who make it happen and have made it happen.
Sure.
But even
Absolutely.
those are feeling the inflections of our current environment, where it's just not, you're not getting the budgets you used to. Even a year back, 2 years back, those budgets are barely existing nowadays.
Well, then it also gets you into the fact that, I mean, why I got back into photo many, many years ago wasn't the money. It was, I wanted to work.
Yeah.
I wanted to work. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to be useful. I wanted to be,
keep that muscle going.
I wanted to keep, exercising that muscle of creativity.
Absolutely.
And, you know, even during my heyday, you know, you're directing one a month, if that, one every 2 months, whatever. So much downtime, you know, and photo filled that. Now it became a thing. Yeah. But like, I wanted to be
keep
creative.
that muscle going. Yeah. Yes. There's a point where you feel in between jobs, you might have a couple good jobs, but then you'll hit, you know, a month or two and you're not working. And the marriage of not working that creative muscle, but also I think the stress of like eating yourself, because so much of us live on our heads. We live in our heads all the time. We're constantly, there's not a voice in my head talking or thinking about something, you know?
Absolutely.
So inherently in those spaces, you get in a more negative space. You start, you know, is that my last job? Am I never going to work again? You know? So it's trying to find ways to keep yourself progressively working and that creative muscle going, and trying to find new avenues. And, you know, I think you said this to me once, but like, don't be a dinosaur. You got it. You don't be a dinosaur. Don't let yourself become extinct.
You got to come out.
Don't find yourself ignorant to change. Like, adjust with it. Find your avenue. Find a way to do that in the best product and quality way, and way that's true to you as a creative. But don't become a dinosaur as the industry's changing. Because I mean, from the time I started 2010, 2011 in this to now, it's such a different, I mean, it's always a different place, and it's still a different place even in the past 2, 3, 4 years. You know, it's just constantly changing all the time. So finding ways to adapt and marriage yourself and your identity creatively as you progress is, it's a
whirlwind, you know, because now you hate to admit it, but like social media sees far more eyeballs than broadcast. Most broadcast, you know what I mean? I'm not talking Super Bowl and, you know, playoffs and all that stuff, but I'm talking like our industry. More eyeballs are seeing social media. Yeah. So naturally, I mean, one of our guests said it best. Nate Rose was he's taking his tier 1 budget and putting it all into tier 2 with the quality. Yeah. You see, not taking the tier 2 and just shitting out tier 2. It's take everything we were going to do in 1 and bring it down to 2. And that's really a great idea. You know, that's kind of where things are evolving. Yeah. Do you have any horror stories before we of like the old road days or anything, like any fun things before we get into the production side of the world?
I mean, there's tons of stories. Obviously, I'm not gonna like you can't. No names. Yeah, you can't say names. No there's names. Plenty of, especially in the early. I don't want to say early, but in the younger years of my touring life, there was a lot less social media or things going on. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like this rock star Motley Crue, people just, you know, ripping lines and doing all this stuff. It wasn't that world at all. But there was a little bit more fun and play, you know. People would go out and party. People would have good times, you know. People would be living a little bit more freely without the aspect that somebody was going to record them or, you know, try to manipulate some situation off of that. So, I mean, there's a ton. Obviously, you know, I love to write. So, you know, I have a lot of those that banked into some long-term things that I'm working on.
That's a smart move, you know. Yes, I agree.
It's a lot of like those road diaries without you know, balance between things that happened and fictionalizing it, and you know, trying to marry those two things into a concept. You know, it's kind of that space of everything I've lived or seen, and saw, and but putting it into a space that's new and fresh. And you know, it's obviously not the touring days of like the 70s where you know you had, but there was a lot of fun times there that I don't think they exist, but they don't exist in the right light.
Was there a limit, you know, because you have such a skill and an interest for stories and writing and such. Was it a ticking time bomb kind of thing on the road where it's like, okay, you knew that it wasn't feeding what you wanted it to be? How did you keep that interest alive? You know, while you were shooting just kind of content stuff.
Yeah.
Are you writing scripts or you know, how do you keep that part of your interest going?
Yeah. I think the initial draw of going on the road and making content, obviously I want to make music videos, but I was always obsessed with chasing story and living story. I don't think you can tell a good story without having some fragment of yourself living part of it. You know, if you're just trying to write something purely off of research or something looking, or you're not going to have a great story. You're going to have a synopsis. You might have a rough outline of what that can be, but those little in-depth moments, those little things that can only happen through experience that make unique stories can only really be lived. And I've always chased that. My parents are both writers.
Okay.
So I grew up, you know, back in Texas in this little town called Aledo outside Fort Worth in middle of nowhere. It's definitely different now. There's definitely a lot more stuff. But when I grew up, you get out of Fort Worth, there's a cow pasture on each side of the road. That was my hometown. And I grew up in a space with a lot of land. We had horses. I grew up kind of doing the rodeo thing. But my parents are both writers. My dad specifically working as an investigative journalist, but, you know, he'd go chase serial killers. He would go chase lost treasures. You know, he would chase pedophilia in the Catholic Church and go track these guys down into Argentina. So he was always chasing stories. And, you know, as a kid, I didn't obviously go with him to go chase serial killers, but he would bring me on these little stories to go and chase these different things. So I grew up always like traveling with him as he would go and investigate. And he would spend, you know, it was back when the newspapers would pay him 6 months to go chase one story. So he would spend all this time trying to find these huge pieces and these huge things. And there was always a draw growing up that's inherently kind of what I wanted to do.
Okay.
But newspapers died quickly. They're pretty dead at the moment without selling yourself out to a bunch of other things. That type of journalism is pretty hard to exist nowadays. Unfortunately, it exists. There are people that do it, but it's not in the same element it used to be. But a lot of that kind of moved into the documentary space in a way. And, you know, I always wanted to do that. My parents were like, do not get in the newspaper. Don't do that. So I always kind of had that background. I played music. That was kind of my creative journey. And when I found video and kind of found touring, I kind of find a marriage of chasing that story and kind of, you know, what my parents had done rebirthed in a new line of media and a new way that I could tell those stories. So being on the tour, as much as like music videos were my push, there was a lot of experiences and a lot of things that were so unique to such a small pocket of people that I was enthralled with doing the best job I could, but also experiencing as much as I could while I was out there. You know, because you're going to all these different places, you're seeing all these unique artists, you're seeing the mental spaces of an artist fresh, figuring themselves out for the first times in front of audiences, and the navigation of how they do that and how they maintain that, and also the fluctuations of watching artists' songs blow up and how those crowds change and how more and more people pop up and how those fandoms kind of pop in. So I got fascinated with living the story of what that was from a background.
Yeah, that's
true. It's kind of like the modern day, what's that movie? Almost Famous.
Yeah.
Such a good movie. Where that kid goes on and writes on the road. You know, it's very written journalism, but I viewed the video photo world as kind of being in that space, as being a background thing. And that's where, you know, I've always loved your photos of being on the road where it's not the stage shot. It's not your 400 millimeter from the front of paint. Those do nothing for me. Cool. They're great. That's a great Getty image. Congrats. But like, I want the stuff backstage. I want that one element that happens before everything, that one moment out where you're just out before the show and you're doing something random and you're breaking that line between an artist being a real person and not the facade that they are. Not
I
saying
love
that's
that you
fake,
said that.
but it's an artist has to put up a front. They have to be something.
Sure. And a photo can tell a story.
Oh, it can.
And I shoot for that.
Yeah.
I clearly shoot for that. I don't care if I am all day and I get one.
Yeah.
Of course I'm going to get 400.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
One that I'm like, yo,
this is it. Yeah.
this is it. You like it?
Yeah.
And luckily right now, like Jake is like that. Jake Owen he doesn't want you to show him anything that is
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
If everybody's going left, I want to see your far other direction, of what you got. And it pushes me.
Oh, for sure, man.
Oh man, it pushes me because you'll go 2 days and you're going to 2 shows or 2 days. Because I'm shooting mostly during the day. That's where I'm trying to shoot.
Yeah.
And you give 5 photos.
Yeah.
But they're bangers.
They're awesome.
We got all the tier 2 and tier 3 all you want. But, I'm going for that one storytelling photo. And there's so much criteria that goes into me saying, that's it.
Yeah.
So you answered that question pretty beautifully.
Yeah.
I love that. Because
there's so much you can, especially with like those types of photos, you can sit there and try to make them happen. You can know the show and be like, this is exactly where I need to be. You're never going to get it trying to do that. It's always that one, you no control. You're in no control. You're just at mercy of what the situation and that relationship with the artist and that one snap at the random time of catching them look at you or that one goofy remark. It's that.
And you can tell too, the photographers or content guys, girls who are out on the road with an artist, you can tell when there's a relationship between the two.
For sure.
Because the photo or the moments do tell that story.
Yeah.
They unpeel one layer deeper or a couple layers deeper than just the surface value. Boom.
For sure. And I think I think that's where a lot of the content space can go and should go to be good, and I think that's why those sizzle cuts of 2017 faded out, because you can only show a show so many times before you feel like you might get the show and it might be a good sell for like, this is cool, but you're not getting the artist. You're not doing anything to the benefit of who that artist is by just showing them run around on a stage with some pyro.
We've made it to the second half of where I want to talk.
Okay.
Because that was a perfect segue into now productions.
Yeah.
And all that. And we're so often I am seeing content creators coming from the road based off of what you just said. I've shot as much as I can, and they're seeing that they want to get into production too.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing and hearing and noticing is that they're coming in and trying to the record labels hire them because they're, happy to take on the job, right? They're starting low. Record labels love that because they're cheap.
Yeah. That's what
and they have a so-called relationship.
Yes.
A visual relationship with the artist.
Yeah.
They do. And when they get to the job, it's lackluster. It's lack of experience. They have zero know-how, etiquette, or just the methodology
for sure.
of a production.
Yeah.
Right? And therefore now you get your DPs. Dun, da, da, da.
Oh, yeah. Come in, save the day. Yeah.
Save the day with
Let's
the big
make this look
S
cool.
Superman.
Yeah.
Right. Because I feel like, you saw back around near COVID or just before COVID, it was everything anamorphic, vintage, because you can hide behind the
you can hide behind pretty long shots.
The character of the glass.
For sure.
Haze up the room.
Yes.
Get it.
Haze up the room, make it moody. Let's shoot an anamorph, make sure people know that it's expensive. It's the same lure of the red phenomenon.
Exactly.
It's like everyone wanted to shoot red. And it's like, sure, red's fine, but you're obsessed with a name, not the product. Anybody with a Canon 5D Mark II could overdo that red if they know what they're doing.
Shooting a whole concert tour on an iPhone.
Yeah,
and I'll
it's
stand
not.
that.
I love the technology, but it doesn't mean a thing.
No.
At the end of the day.
But I say all that because here I am a person of like majority production,
Mm-hmm.
I put you in my hot seat on so many aspects of production.
For sure.
And you came from
The
content.
Yeah.
Where did I guess you were saying that being at Fly High, you were able to do all of those things, right? And you got kind of skilled in it.
I think you juggle all those things. I do think it comes from my roots and foundation of being story obsessed, because I think there's a lot of content guys that there's a lot of ways to make pretty looking visuals that show an artist, that get the, show their performance, do the basic bare minimum job of what a music video has to be.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up on the roots of what a music video can be,
Sure.
and what those videos did and how they impact me, I think there's a lot of content guys that don't realize the pre-production. It means a lot more than just having a location and a cool artist and the right DP and a crew. Mm-hmm. It's the understanding of what you're trying to tell, and that understanding fully what is your vision, what are you trying to make on the front end. On a lot of my videos, I hand storyboard every single shot.
I know.
And every single one of those videos, I can look back and it's a horrible looking adolescent
you get
thing.
it.
But I want to know exactly what's happening.
You can definitely see from your work it's plotted, planned.
I think that's a difference that has to be made. It doesn't have to be made, because obviously
I feel like we are losing elements of the craft
for sure
by this situation.
Yeah, and part of that is inexperience and not knowing that. Another part of it is budget constraints and time. I feel like a lot of us have the problem of you at least have 2 weeks before you shoot a video, rather than getting a hit up by something and you have a week to figure it out.
No.
Yeah, and you're like, all right, I haven't even been able to listen to the song. How am I supposed to ingest this and think up a concept and pitch it and get it budgeted and greenlit, and then also do all my prep work and then show up on set and make sure it all just runs as smooth. It's just the wheel of how quick things have to happen currently has gotten so expedited that it's getting, there's a point where that wheel's people have to realize you either give it time to ingest or that wheel's probably going to fall off. You might get lucky a couple times, but you're going to lose on one by falling off.
I know on Bailey Zimmerman, that was on Religiously, you helped out greatly, because for me to make that day, even though that day was that was a 14-hour?
It was a long one.
It was a 14-hour day with 3 company moves.
Yeah.
And a lot of logistics.
Yeah.
And I was so happy to have you next to me, because I had a clear vision. I'll always have a clear vision.
Yeah.
But like I said at the beginning, is I have a tendency to overshoot so that I have options in the edit to play with. Mm-hmm. But on that type of job, you don't have all the time to shoot options.
Yeah. You gotta be in and out.
And I loved how there was that one shot of Bailey leaving the room.
Yeah.
And she's just left back there just distraught. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was freaking out, because we had to get out of that location and get to the church, because we had to pre-light the church, blah, 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 blah. And we were running out of time, and I had all these shots to kind of tell these emotions, right? And you're like, let's do this one shot, blah, 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 blah. It'll cover your 4 shots that you want to do.
Yeah.
And truly, I think I did the shot.
You said, I'm going to give you the shot, but I'm going to shoot the others as quick as I can. So
yes, because I'm going to let you do it, and I'm going to still plot out what I want to do. And I sat, okay, and you did it. And I was like, that's it, moving on.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a testament to what we are talking about.
Yeah,
is to say, how can 4 shots be one?
Yeah,
with emotion.
Cut the fat.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And there's times where, those 4 shots if it's high action sequence, you need those cuts, because are you going to get the right amount of blocking in a day to make that action work? No, you got to find those editing gimmicks to get around. But when it comes to emotion in a scene, you can gain a lot by holding on a shot.
Yeah.
Don't get cutty with it, let yourself sit there, and it was like that. I remember that one shot of you on the doorway. I was obsessed with trying to pair it with him on the tour bus, looking back with that look, because you're both stuck in this frame you're walling yourself in down this line, and you're marrying a memory with emotion, and you make them feel connected through those types of looks. And
that was good. I remember that the door and the door.
Yeah.
What other videos did we do? Michael Ray. That was a strong one. What? Get Her Back.
Yeah. That was fun.
We got into the trenches on that one.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like living in the content world?
Mm-hmm.
And now that you've had you've shot more videos, of course, but you've had two successful videos with Warren Ziders. Do you feel like that's it's difficult to break into and have people see you as more of a seasoned production director versus the living amongst the content space?
For sure, man. I'm still feel like I'm bare bottom grassroots coming up. I've done those Warren videos that did great. I did one for this girl Molly Tuttle, who's phenomenal bluegrass musician, and I've gotten these these videos now. White Floor is another one. I've gotten to kind of push creatively what I am and what I try to make. They're not the same, but they all are not a bar video with a guy in a truck trying to, there's elements of that, but they're not the tried and true CMT country videos. And that's the space that I always lived in, which is hard to sell sometimes. It's hard to pitch artists and things on that space.
Sure.
But I'm still grassroots coming up. And fortunately, all those bids came from everywhere but Nashville. I'm still stuck in a bubble in Nashville where I'm not going to get bids necessarily. I'm very much a content guy because I was one of those people that said, yes, I'll go do a job. At the end of the day, I like to work. I want to keep that muscle going. I want to meet as many people as I can and work with as many people as I can. And I'm a utility knife at the end of the day. You can generally, if I get put into something, I generally know how to do it by now, as navigate it. So I'm still battling that and figuring that out, and I think
your star is shining bright when you get that when you're put in the helm.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of, I think, keep grinding through it is the only thing I can do or know how to do, is to keep on when I get those opportunities to do a video and do the treatment, the job, the bid that I want to do, the vision that I perceive, and I can do it to the absolute best of my ability, and that's that planning, drawing out every single shot I can, knowing exactly how I want it to look before I ever step in, knowing every single little cut before I go into that day, so I know how to navigate.
Okay, but let's talk about this. Are you now, because you said about 15 minutes ago, you were kind of like a yes man. You took every job.
For sure.
Taking what you just said a while back to what you just said, would you be that way with jobs? Like, if it's not the right budget to execute the way you need to, are you going to be eager to get it and show that you can do something? Or stick to your guns, require the funds to do it the right way? Are you learning from the past to now, or have you been bit in the butt by doing it the wrong way and going down that alley and just getting crushed because
I think I've gotten bitten in the butt enough to know that being the yes guy before, to being like, cool, there's almost no budget, I'll hop into this and try to kill myself to figure it out. I'll take all this extra time that I'm not going to get paid for. I'm not going to get overtime. I'm going to have to work a bunch of other crappy jobs to supplement that one cool job. I've definitely come into it with an eyes now of knowing how to navigate what's okay for me and what should be acceptable to me, because I think we've gotten to a place where it's so eager as a young creative to want to be making those things. I am 100% the most guilty person of this. I want to make those music videos. I want to make something really cool, and I want to have those opportunities.
You get excited for the call.
Yeah, that's what drives me. I'm not driven by the other stuff.
For sure.
So you find yourself, saying yes, but we've now gotten to a place where we've allowed an industry to manipulate that, to where we've gotten to a place to where we've set the bar so low on some things, on payment and what those budgets are okay and what is okay to do on a set, that we've allowed a lot of our market to get manipulated by that, because they know that at some point they've paid somebody an absurdly low rate to go do that. Same thing with touring. I mean, I think I made more touring than what a lot of people in 2014 than what people get paid now to go on the road.
Sure.
And it's all part of that, system of profitability and margins, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, there has to be some backbone and bare minimum of what, should be acceptable and should be okay.
Yeah, and the client needs to know if they're not going to get you, they can certainly go shop somewhere else.
Yeah.
No problem. But, you have a history with me.
Yeah.
We've done good business.
For sure.
You can't take it personally.
Can't take it personally. It's
not
just
personal.
Part of it is.
And they have a budget or they don't. And maybe they're hiding money and they just don't want to. That's fine. But you're given whatever information you're given and you only have that to work off of.
For sure.
And you should have, I tell a lot of young directors, specifically directors, people in production, you really need to know what things cost, what it takes for you in your time to want to be invested for 12, 13, 14 days.
Absolutely.
And you cannot really take on other jobs. You're going to get paid within 60 days of, it's going to be rough.
Yeah. You're not, you're going to have low payments. I think the transparency of the market is so unknown. I remember hopping in and trying to bid myself out whenever I got on the road as being in like just an operator, different things. And I'm like, what do you charge? Like, what is the acceptable rate? Because especially as you're a young kid coming in, you don't know what to charge. You just want to get the job and you don't want to overbid the job because you think you're going to lose your income. But you also don't want to completely underbid yourself to a ridiculous rate. So I think there's not a lot of transparency on
And I know I've been helped. We've talked about this with many of your jobs too.
Yeah, just knowing what is okay, what those rates should be, what is acceptable. Because at the end of the day, the other side's just trying to get the cheapest job they can for the best product. It's supply demand. What's the best?
But they say that, but then when it's all shot and the edit is what it is because you don't have certain things, they still expect it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's the double whammy. Do you feel like do you feel like an agent or a rep, a director's rep or a production company, whatever is important in your work phase where you are now, or is it more self-owned? And
I think it's 50-50. I think there's a lot of stuff that at the end of the day, as a production company, you just can't touch. Like it's hard for a production company to touch a $20K, $15K job.
No one's making.
I'm gonna have $2,500 at the end of the day when you do all of your expenses and what you have to do and the licensing and the insurances and the things that you have to have on the background.
Yep.
But at the same time, you get in to a 50. I don't want to have to manage the insurances or the taxes or the payout on every single person, and I don't. Those are so many things that are such a requirement that you have to do. The big boy stuff that you have to do that creatives don't really.
Infrastructure and administration.
I don't want to spend my time doing those things. So there's a marriage of those two things, and I think the bigger jobs you have to have production on these things. And I think there's a weird space where we've kind of gotten out of dancing around some production elements.
Yeah, and make no mistake, record labels and those big jobs are going to pursue a job with a company that can handle their money.
For sure.
It's not going to the
it's investment.
The uber duper creative person. No, living out
you
your
gotta
closet.
Have structure. You gotta have the person that says, "Cool, you're not going to overspend, and we're not going to have a weird bill for $15K on a $20K job at the end because they let their creative go ahead of them and they buy and So I think there's a navigation of learning those things. Not I've definitely lost my rate on some things. Of letting the creative get ahead of me. Where you go, cool. I'd rather have this lens. Let me eat half of my day rate on this part of it and swallow it, and I'll be happy with what I made. But I think trying to navigate and learn those things and set up the background now. I know what I can achieve and the quality of product I want to achieve. And I know that there are just some jobs that I'm not going to be able to get that rate, and I'm not going to be able to get those elements in the background to do that successfully. And there's a point where I've done that enough on lower end jobs and lower end content things where it can't be worth it. You know, there's a point where you dig yourself in that hole.
Well, it starts also with knowing, I say this to everybody who's listening and needs to know this, but it starts with knowing the business, knowing what things cost. So when you're writing the treatment, when you get the music and you're being told you have, I'm just going to throw an even number, 50K.
Yeah.
You know, you have to write a treatment that's going to get, it's great to the song, but also that is going to hit that budget.
Yeah.
And what I see, I've been saying this for decades, and it's never going to go away, but it's just people come in, they get repped by different companies or whatever, and they, you know, maybe they're content guys or nowadays, and they're just so, they got wild ideas. Sure, no one's taken away the great idea that they may have.
Yeah.
But that idea can't be shoved into a one-day $50,000 video.
No.
It's just not going to happen.
It's not possible.
So I see that a lot. Again, that goes back with the inexperience. People like that do need a production company arm to kind of steer and say, yo, I had it. I mean, with Joe Giuliano and Tommy Labuda, I mean, it'd be like, yo, okay, hold on. You submitted the treatment. We're going to send it to our executive producer. They're going to do a quick budget on it.
Yeah.
That's if it got past, this idea is cheesy.
Yeah.
Or this ain't it, guys.
Yeah.
Tommy knew from his conversations with the record label and or what it kind of needed to be, but he didn't want to say it too much to us on the front end because it would steer the idea. But that happened a lot.
Yeah.
So young directors really do need, I feel, a production arm to nurture.
For sure.
Nurture it. But I don't see that. I don't see that.
I don't see it.
I see a content guy who's friends with the band, friends with the artist, and they talk on the road. They go do it. They write a big 3-page treatment, and now they have 12 hours to do a gnarly video, and it comes out lukewarm.
Yes. And I think part of that is technology is carrying a lot of people's backs on that, versus the film days. You had to be exact with how you were going to light that. You couldn't just fluff around and make it work. You didn't have, you couldn't immediately know if you got that okay. You were balancing off of seasoned professionals that knew exactly how much that backlight was hit, how much key you needed.
Every line item had a person.
Yeah, and there was a purpose behind it. And we've been able to kind of skate around that and dance around that, and at the end of the day, the worst product then would have been bad, like it ruined, unusable. The worser product today, it's still acceptable.
Good enough.
It's good enough.
That's funny.
It'll get views. Like, we're not going to lose all of our money. We're not losing all of our money on it. It might be lukewarm, and you're not going to get the views like you anticipated. Whoa, of course. But it's okay and it's acceptable. And when you have that many line items at a label or at things, it gets sifted under. It's like, okay, that passes. It's 4K, it's sharp, it passes. Versus the stuff that actually will get traction and get views and supplement an artist. I think there's that balance that we're still figuring out coming out of the COVID wake of making as much content as possible versus good content. And we're still figuring out that balance of, we just need a ton of stuff, or do you need one good thing? And we're still trying to find the marriage that's going to inevitably fall in an in-between, because pieces and content's always going to exist. We can't remove that from the equation, but we've seen a lot of great artists make really low budget videos. That artist might have 1 million subscribers on YouTube. They might have a ton of number ones, but I bet you go back to all those cheap, videos they did, I bet you they barely get the views that they expected out of them. So
for sure,
what's the worth in that,
Yeah, man, it's the value of putting how much into the video and how much you're going to get.
And I think there's, quality of, I think that's the one thing that I'm still trying to figure out coming from the content world and trying to get into, I've done directing. I want to be in the television, TV space is really what I want to be. But there has to be, the only way in my eyes to do that is to continually make really, really good, thought-provoking content. Not just good stuff that looks visual, because that's a DP's game.
Yep.
I need to make stuff that makes you think beyond just what's happening, what you're listening to. And that's the only way I think people can come up, is to make really good stuff. And I think that's the difference of, there's a lot of creatives in the video world right now, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the video world at the moment. So there's a lot of people who come of it with a creative space who want to make the coolest piece of art they can. And then there's a lot of people who understand the business aspect of it and know I can get X amount for 60 videos and I know I can sell this. And I think those two mindsets are great. I think the creative side needs to take a lot of lessons from the entrepreneurial side on business structure and how to set those up. But I think there's inherently a loss on the entrepreneurial side when it comes to the content and creatively what is actually happening. And I feel like that's one of the unique things I've seen coming today. Cause I mean, we get so many, I'm sure you've seen the spam of, I can get you 10 clients with $10,000 retainers. So you're making $100K in a month. And it's like, whatever, bullshit, dude. I'm looking at all your account. I can't see one video you've done that's quality, you know, but it's that sell of quick, get rich, success, entrepreneurial mindset that's kind of invaded the market a little bit, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's we're in the sifting stages still of figuring out that might work on paper and it might work logistically. It might work on a pitch to your financial managers at the creative space. But at the end of the day, that's not doing anything for the actual creative of what's happening in the brand of that artist.
Yeah, it gets made, but
so we're still
turn
going
the needle?
we're still going through the ebbs and flows of how that reacts and what that volatility looks like and what that pans out to an artist, you know?
Do you feel like, how do I say this? You know, social media obviously plays a heavy role in the industry.
For sure.
Do you feel you can do what you're saying through social media? Meaning not the entrepreneurial side, but do you only making pieces that you're being hired for to do creative work, or can you do creative work to tell stories outside of the matrix? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like little stories or little, like even some of the things we talked about, doing little teasers or figuring out ways that are maybe our music, but it's telling a creative story in 60 seconds. I don't know. I'm learning that social media isn't going to go away.
It's not going to go away. And as much as I want to make stuff that people watch on their couch or sit there, as much as I'm driven by that, I'm still trying to push myself in that space of getting into social media. Like, how do I promote myself? How do I do it without losing the integrity of what I want to be and what I want myself as a creative to represent? But I'm still trying to, how do I navigate? How do I push myself a little bit more into the social media presence without sitting behind the other people I make art for?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a valuable tool that I'm need to explore and wanting to explore and trying to figure out, because we don't want to be a dinosaur. I was
just gonna say that.
You can't.
You gotta evolve. You don't have to necessarily. You just gotta. I am too.
Yeah.
I'm not great with it. You know.
Yeah. I think I think all of us are. I'm one of those people who I will think so many times before I put out a single post about something, because I'm like, does it fit my timeline? Is this just okay? You know, and I think I did that a lot because I toured a lot in 2018 with Brett Eldridge, and that was like the first time I spent tons of time. I think we did 100 and something shows that year. I went all around the world with him. I was right beside him for so much of that.
Great photos, by the way.
But I only posted a handful, you know, sure, I made tons of photos. I took thousands and thousands of photos out there, and I took a lot of great concert photos. You know, I did the thing, but all the photos that I latched to or posted or gravitated towards were everything but that. It was, there's one still that I love of him where he was coming up this staircase, and we went to this spot in New York. That was an Italian spot that was Frank Sinatra's favorite spot. So we were going there, the owner was taking us through, and we sat at the table that Frank used to sit at so we could see the whole space. So, none of the mob bosses could come in and do his thing. So he had to have sights on everything that was happening in the room. But as we were coming up the staircase, there's this like fluted glass mirror that wraps around, and he was coming up, and we were in a rush to do this like Sirius XM thing. And I was like, stop, just give me like 5 seconds. And I snapped a couple photos. And it was like, that's still one of my favorite photos of the day, because it's just on a whim. I had 30 seconds to do it. and it just looks so cool. And there's a handful of those that I've gotten. There were a couple that were on the in performance where he was exhausted in the thing, and he lays down on the stage over him. But that's because I had that relationship where I could go and literally just stand above him and take a photo. I'm not going to interrupt him from his moment.
Yeah.
Versus without that relationship, if somebody else came up, he's going to break out of that moment to it's finding that marriage of those two things and breaking out of the usual what we think is a good concert photo versus what's telling me something beyond just him and a performance and an artist.
Absolutely, man.
So
what's next? So as we move into the, are we still trying to write some scripts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I
the goal.
write scripts all the time, man. I've got, obviously I sit baked on ideas, and I've got several in the oven. I think the hardest thing that I'm trying to navigate is a lot of the next steps always look like short films or, in that space. And I just don't, for the stories that I want to tell and the stories that I kind of have banked and written on, they don't really fit into a short film space. And I don't want to go waste $15K of my own money to go shoot something when I don't believe in what it's behind. And I don't want to, is it worth spending that to have a 10-minute piece to show that I can do it, versus putting weight into writing really, really good stories and find that time when you can let the worlds collide and find those right people to pass it along
have
to,
it ready to go.
But I think it's an interesting thing in the world today, like watching your episode with Potsy.
Yeah.
And how he talked about selling scripts of finding the person to cast before the pitch, of knowing who you're going to put into it. And it seems like everything that gets sold has to have an IP behind it today. You're not going to sell something with a new actor and a new idea it's got to have some thread of something that already has something to exist and traction behind, without having like some magical uncle who runs a hedge fund that's going to throw you, $5 million. It's not going to happen, so it's finding those threads of, I'm trying to write stuff that not only I have experienced or lived or play off of those things, play off of experiences or things that I know true and hold true and can write about, but things that are maybe true and have an IP and have some historical draw or connection beyond just that story, something that is inherently already going to have a market that people are interested in. So kind of that's how I'm changed. Obviously I've been writing. I think a lot of this stuff fits in that, but taking that insight of how to navigate that is kind of my biggest step forward now of doing that. Yeah.
I would also think hitting up an artist or something that you could sell them on, show them like a documentary for them would be something right up your alley. I love music docs.
Well, we've done, so I've got like Warren. So the way I got connected with Warren was exactly in that space. Was I got hit up by someone at his label, and they kind of talked to me about doing road stuff, but he was fresh TikTok. He had never done a show before at that point. Like never, he was still learning to play guitar and sing live.
Okay.
And I got called got connected, got thrown to one of his managers. They were like, hey, will you come up and just cover a show for us? And this was weird for me because I had gone from, doing pretty big tours at that point. I toured with a bunch of people. I was tour bus life. I was
You're a road dog.
I had a bunk.
You were seasoned.
We had a bunk. We had catering. I had, I could have a gym to work out in the morning. I was living a polished life when I went on the road.
Sure, I had 2 juices a day.
Yeah.
I got a trainer. Yeah.
So I hopped in a car and went up. I had a Holiday Inn. We go into this venue. The green room is just basically this tiny little closet next to the stage. There's no way to get in and out once you're in it, and the crowd packed in. The cap was maybe like 400, but like 800 people showed up to a show. So it was out the door. Everything was slam packed. I'm in this tight space with terrible lighting, a ceiling that's like, I'm a short guy and I had maybe a foot. So, it was weird diving in that space, but I did see the inherent, like that was something I hadn't really seen, of somebody go from social media that quickly to that much of a fan base. Because there's a lot of artists that have great radio songs, great number ones, but it doesn't translate to fandom. It doesn't translate to the people in the crowd. And that's a hard thing that I think a lot of people are trying to figure out. You can have great success as a musician, but not have the fans to back up the live portion of it. And I remember singing that with him. And then I know a lot of his stuff was all vertical, you know, it's all has to be this way. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to his manager and I was like, y'all, we need to shoot stuff that's not that. Like, we can shoot that. I think that's valuable.
They said that to go other way than vertical?
No, I pitched that.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's what I pitched.
I was like, you're going to dig yourself in a hole when you're trying to tell his story, which is going to be important. I mean, he's done great. He's below the bounds of what most people think he should have done, and he keeps on doing it. And, you know, he's had great success on that Ride the Lightning song that blew up, but he's continually proved that he is an artist who's staying as he's progressing, and it's been fun to watch that. But, you know, I came in wanting to shoot the documentary aspect of that, of shooting the stuff in a proper format to be ingested in that light, not a quick sizzle. They
were looking at it, how to fit it into today's apps.
Like, I mean, formats. I came in to shoot some content and some good stills and marriage that photo video and do some really cool stuff for him, but wanted to pitch how we need to expand that out, you know? And I've still, you know, there's a buddy who hit me up back when I was touring with Brett, who was a young kid, wanted to get into it. And inherently that's a road job. Somebody needs to be on the road, and I'm trying, you know, I'll go on the road, but I'm an old dog now, you know, there's a point the road wears you out. You start hitting your 30s and you're like, I'm not going to do this anymore,
I mean, if it's for a piece, if it's going to be, you know, sound, audio, piece, story, emotions, you know, doc, hook, line, sinker, I'm in. Yeah.
So I got him plugged out there, and he's been doing awesome work. And I think keeping that thought of keeping things docu-style, shoot for it. Don't just shoot for your content. Don't just shoot for your quick 30-minute, what do I have to shoot to get the job done, versus looking in the long scope of what can I shoot that's going to purpose later.
A legacy.
Stuff. Yeah, is important, you know. And I think those are things I learned from Mike Monaco with his Luke, because he spent years out there to make that documentary for him. And
everything.
Yeah, there's so much that never even made that, you know. There's so much of that stuff that's those lifestyle, those moments that you need to capture looking forward. And I think some content people need to think about a bigger picture rather than just what you need to deliver and what's the quick pull.
Or the algorithm, right? I keep hearing the algorithm wants vertical. Okay, like make the vertical from the piece, you know, from the horizontal piece, you know. I mean, like,
absolutely. Shoot for both.
Yeah, shoot for both. Don't be, like you just said, don't shoot for the immediate when you could have a bigger.
Give your space to look at all of the elements that could eventually come to, and come in with that lie, you know. So I love the music documentary space. I love, you know, there's a couple other docs that I'm trying to figure out at the moment, but it's still very much I still try to keep that green-eyed look of, at the end of the day, I have a camera. I know how to do what I need to do. The only thing holding me back sometimes is the ideas of budgets and what I need to do, versus at the end of the day, I can go hop in a car and shoot it myself if I need to.
Amen.
And I will. And we do. And I need to keep that bug alive, you know, keep chasing your stuff and keep chasing for those longer things. Cause
that was a big thing for me when the business shifted. Because I came from the big jobs, you know, where we said earlier, every line item had a crew member.
Yeah.
So directing and conducting your business when there's crew everywhere to handle whatever thought that comes to your mind is one way to do it. But then when I moved to Nashville, I forget when, but 16 years ago, it was the decline of film into 5D. In red. There wasn't the Alexa wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
And because of that technology, you weren't needing a person on every line item.
Oh yeah. You don't have processing costs.
It came with such a new canvas for me of it took a while.
Yeah.
My work very much shows the early days of digital. And when I started to figure it out, how to use it, how to learn how to move with these things.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, it's different. You move. What do you mean? Move with the Arri 435 or move with a whatever? What's the difference? Big difference. Arri film, you've got lights all around you. You got crew. Yeah. I mean, I just said there's a line item for every crew member. So now you got everybody out there. Yeah. You can't play. You can't move as much. Yeah. I learned really how to do all of that. That was. Yeah. We said that earlier, and I know that was one of my struggles. Yeah. Merging into
figuring out how to do less when you're used to having more, you know. Yes. We're still in that space of where cameras can basically shoot in no light, which is wild. I don't think you should. I think you should understand but do you need all these huge lights pumping in outside anymore, or can you manipulate off of what the data exists and think about it with one or two gaffers, you know? And I think there's a lot of space that
I enjoy that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I enjoy the freedom of being able to think on the spot, be inventive, explore.
For sure. Yeah.
It didn't work there, but it's discovering. And then when you finally get it, you're like, it's just like that Brett Eldredge shot where it feels so right and so honest.
Yeah. You're just there. You're moving. You know, you're fine. You're playing and you have more freedom, kind of run around and find your places rather than lock it, light it, shoot it, move it, lock it, light it, shoot it. You just go find it, go move. It's that kind of more adolescent, fun run around.
Yeah.
That we all tried to grow up from, you know?
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to discuss is your talents in post.
Yeah.
Because I think that's awesome. And we've talked about writing, directing, photo.
Yeah.
You edit all of my jobs.
Yeah.
So, and we spend so much time in there. I thought we would, take couple minutes and talk about what our process is like, or just what it's like editing. When I'll talk for a minute, but like the way I work is tell me if I'm wrong, but I like to give you, what is it, like 3 days, 4 days, a day of digitize and 3 days on your own, and then it's usually like a day or two after. In there, right? But you also deal with visual effects. Talked about your love, and I guess this goes back to the storytelling. Yeah. Because you love, even if it's not your directorial work, you like taking the pieces,
crafting the story. Yeah.
Crafting the story.
Yeah. And it's fun. I think I love editing, especially one thing I love diving into Eddie is because it was so well done. So like I'm able to hop into edit with footage and stuff that's done at such a high caliber where I'm just playing. There's not bad stuff in there. I'm not trying to make something. I'm not trying to turn a toad into a prince. I've the prince exists. I just get to make him look better.
But
I think there's a lot of benefit there versus, there's definitely projects I came up where it wasn't that. I'm trying to polish a turd. At the end of the day,
I'm trying to put lipstick on a pig.
Yeah. But I think hopping into your process. Obviously we have all these different things, and I think a lot of editors are bad or if you're new to editing, you just want to hop right into the edit. You want to throw a track in the timeline and you want to start throwing cuts. And there's a reason why you need to organize and understand all those things. Yeah. So a matter of going through and ingesting and knowing all the footage that you have, building out worlds, as we call them, as little spaces. So you have timelines of knowing exactly, this scene with this thing, boom, I've got that world already. And you've got your selects, every shot that you would possibly want to use for every single world, and stuff color coded and planned out and mapped out and organized. So when you get into finally starting to throw stuff in a timeline, you're not freaking out trying to find where that clip is or where did I put it or what thing, you have a system. Editing's a lot more, it's very creative. It's very type A on the front end. And if you can't do that type A on the front end, you're going to really dig yourself a hole in the back end.
I love you. Amen.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
If you're not organized, if you're a person who just has like shit all over your desktop, I don't think editing's going to be for you, because you've got to have in folders and subfolders, and you've got to have those subfolders color coded. So when you're in the edit and you see that thing, you're like, oh, purple's this world. I know this thing here. There's that other clip I'm looking for.
And for no other reason, then when you get in the room with people like me, I'm gonna make you look at every shot.
Oh yeah.
And so when I'm like, go to blah world. Let me see your selects for that world, please. Dude.
Yeah.
No. That's a good one. Put it in.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the other roll too. Grab that one. Put that one. Let's see which one works. 2 seconds.
Yeah. First, if you're trying to scrub the 4
through,
hours of stuff we shot,
I will go home. I will walk out.
Yeah.
Be like, Troy.
It's a waste of time. Yeah.
No go.
No one can sit there and find through in 4 hours, and you're not going to do yourself a favor by doing it that way. So everything is on the front end of editing. You can have fun once you do that.
Play like a kid in the back end, right?
But you're gonna have to burn yourself and do the book work before to make sure yourself is set up.
Or hire an assistant if you want to take a little budget out of your.
Yes.
If you don't like to do that or don't have the time.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Take that $300 and have whatever it is, and have someone go do it, and then you watch it.
Yeah. But the end product's never going to be what it should be if you don't do it, because you're going to lose shots. You're going to lose moments because you're feeling rushed and you're panicked and you have deadlines. There's not a deadline we have that's not tight by any means. At the end of the day, you don't have just weeks to work on this stuff. You have a week.
And while you're digesting the footage too, while it's going into the system, you're watching it, learning it, building your own story.
Yeah.
Not your own story, but how you might tell that story.
Oh, for sure. And you learn, you learn what shots to look for. You have obviously your pretty clean shots, your perfect movements where it wraps and everything's perfectly
your
sharp.
Islands, your go-to shots, yeah.
But there's beauty in the imperfections as well that I think plays into a lot of editing and plays into things when you're thinking about getting in and out of situations and how to set yourself up for an action or things like that. There's beauty in that rock and move where it follows our feet and falls out of focus and pulls up to them. There's beauties in finding how those movements move and work. And I know we obviously when we get into an edit, we'll sit there and we got to see everything and tease things, and then I'll always pitch why I like something or why this one little off imperfect shot and how it moves up and then the other shot pans up. How you're following these streams of motion, or streams of action are a big one for me too. If you have like a hand go out, or like that T.A. Thomas we had the one shot of the car,
the hair.
Yeah, that was one that I think that probably will fly past a lot of people, but that's one of those shots that I sat there and I knew I had to make work of the car flying past and that just one little blisk of air from it, because it's those correlation of those two moments across two different scenes and different times that just randomly meld, and most people probably wouldn't think about it or see
I wanted
that
you to lose it.
Shot you didn't.
Remember, I'm like, I don't feel like these work together, or whatever, and you're like, and I go, well, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, because of what you just said.
The car went past, and then she has this wind motion that comes through, and it just creates this cool little visual.
Yeah.
The thing that's the silent understandings of cinema, that little space of telling everything you can with nothing being said. And I think that's the beauty of a lot of music videos, because you live in the space of you don't have narratives. You can't let people talk to tell you these situations. So when you're making story in a music video, you have to find ways to silently tell these things, or find the ways to marriage them with a performance and let the silence and nuances of cinema play into telling your story beyond just telling the people what it is. And I think there's a beauty in that, and I think editing helps you understand all those things. And I'm figuring, I'm still coming up as a director. I still say that loosely because I've directed things, but I'm still building my portfolio.
Of course.
But editing has been the background behind why I think I felt successful behind the videos that I've done, because I know those edits I need. I know the nuances I want. I know the feelings that those and temperaments that those certain videos should have,
And you that's probably the most pet peeved thing about me, I bet you have, when I come in the edit. If I'm going to be, am I going to be too strong?
We're going to go through it. Like, I know that with you
keep it in there. I'll see if I like it in 30 minutes.
You have to see it, and I'm the same way. Like, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. So at the end of the day, editing is all a feeling. You can make an edit perfectly right and it might not feel right, but there's a certain point where you sit there and you've married all these shots together. And when you watch something and don't feel the cuts is my biggest thing. When you can sit there and watch something and you're not thinking about your chops.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is why I'm like, I know choppy cutting is still a thing, of sizzle cuts of give me quick, all this stuff. I hate it, man.
No.
It's not my thing. Like I'll do it, and I understand moments for it. If there's a blitz and a moment of having somebody like a huge flashback moment or something like that, sure. But that's not always the right thing. It's finding that way where you can watch something and you can feel the whole video, and you felt that marriage of the song and the story, and you didn't think once about a single cut.
I love that.
You know, you didn't think, you just ingested. Yeah, you don't think about it. It just works.
And you even started a little side business.
The Desert Child, which is a fun name, but I wanted to, you know, I felt as I've been trying to find my ways out of the content world and brand myself accordingly while still being open to being a utility tool, and knowing that just being a director today is, you're going to sign yourself up for some slow modes, and you better have some funds in the background. You better maybe have a trust fund. I don't know. You know, you gotta have some other financial things going on, because if you just rely on that one thing, you're gonna have some really slow months, and you're gonna dig yourself into some financial trouble. Yeah. So setting myself up to where I could do this editing and not feel like I was convoluting myself as a director, because it was hard to work on your projects and then post stuff that I directed, and then like, am I going to throw up the Bailey Zimmerman video I did? Because if anybody's just scrolling through my thing, it's going to look like I'm trying to say that that's my work. And at the end of the day, I edit it. That's your work. That's your brainchild. That's not something that needs to be branded under the name of what I'm trying to do over here. So finding a way finding a way to be able to promote that work that I'm doing and still make it connect, but
not if people have the right jobs for you, they should be hollering at you, because I rely on you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This has been fun chatting with cameras and lights.
Yeah, man. I came in nervous. I was like, what are we going to talk about? And
you know, I do too on these things. And it's funny. I'm like, you know, why am I nervous? Like, it's just lights.
Just talk. Just talk about it.
Anyway, brother. Yeah. Thank you so much, bro.
Thank you, man.